County Votes, a series of forums featuring candidates for local and state offices and ballot questions Newport County residents will be voting on in November. I'm Sheila Maloney, Managing Editor of the Newport Daily News, and we're here live on Thursday, October 12th. Tonight we are focusing on the Tiverton Town Council. All candidates were invited to participate tonight, and we are joined by Joanna Ruda, Don Ballin, Louise Durfee, Jay Edwards, Cecil Leonard, Claudia Linares, Brian Medeiros, and Albert Wyman. Arthur Wyman. Sorry about that. I'll just call you Buzz. Thank you for being here. Before we start, some information on how these forums work. All candidates on the ballot in these contested races were invited to attend. We'll be using a simple interview format with no formal statements or strict time clocks, although we do ask candidates to try to limit answers to 1 minute. As the moderator, I have the discretion to refocus answers, end answers that run long, or ask a follow-up question. We will start with the first candidate in reverse alphabetical order and give each candidate an opportunity to respond, rotating who receives a question first. I will strive to give each candidate approximately equal time. And to start, Buzz, tell us why you're running for re-election and what your top priority would be if re-elected.
Well, thank you, Sheila, and thank you and the Newport Daily News and the staff at Cox for doing this. It's great for us all to be here so the citizens that don't get a chance to come to meetings have a chance to meet everybody. I'm running for re-election pretty much the same reason I ran last time. I served for 2 years. The first 6 months or a year is always a learning curve on any new job, and as you gain knowledge and move ahead with projects that you've done, I just feel that I'd be not serving the town well to use that time on that learning curve and disappear. So I'd like to give the town another 2 years. The biggest project I was involved with in the 2 years was the landfill. And the landfill, we first started, and I promised I wouldn't mention this again, but we first started with a pay-as-you-throw program, which was presented for a few months. I was asked to serve as the council member of the landfill subcommittee, which I did, and the subcommittee sat and we made presentations to the council to shorten the hours at the landfill, to keep commercial and construction debris out. And I will say, since that's been done, I know Middletown now has looked into a new transfer station and found out that curbside pickup was the best, and we had decided that same thing. I wish them luck with that. We've also learned that the state landfill has come to a capacity problem, or looking to expand, and also asking condos and apartment complexes throughout the state to do more recycling. So with the new recycling committee that's headed up by Steve Rice, and the landfill being shortened in hours, and the construction and commercial debris, as I mentioned before, being kept out, we've really put the town in good shape that the landfill should probably last, and can't quote me on this, even though I'm on the air, at least another 10 years, and we've done a good thing on that. My future thing, and I think my minute's almost up, is as probably anyone's interested in, is to try to expand the tax base for both industrial and business base in the town of Tiverton. So that would probably be the main thing I'd concentrate on my next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, why are you running for re-election? And if you're re-elected, what would be the first thing that you'd like to work on?
Thanks, Sheila. I ran a couple of years ago because I was concerned with the direction the town was going in, and I'm a believer that if you're a resident of the town, you have a responsibility to be involved, and I felt this was something that I could do and I could make a positive difference, and that's what I've tried to do over the last couple of years. Going forward, one thing I can assure people is whenever an issue has come before the council since I've been there, my primary concern or my primary consideration is what's in the best interest of the town. I don't have any personal stake in it. A number of times I've voted against my own personal interest because it was in the best interest of the town. So that, going forward, that's what I plan on continuing. As far as a top priority, for me, everything flows through one simple issue, and that's our financial situation. We have to come up with a sustainable financial situation in town, and I think we've made some gains over the last 2 years. We've made some positive steps with contracts, but I think we're in a situation, particularly on the school side, because that's where the vast majority of the money is, where if we don't start doing something now and get proactive with it, we're going to find ourselves in a situation like Portsmouth is in, where the fixed costs, the contracts, the health benefits are so far out of control, there's nothing we can do at that point. You're not going to develop your way out of that. You're not going to increase your tax base and cover that. The spending has to be brought down. The costs have to be brought down to a sustainable amount that ties in with what people's incomes are going up 3%. Inflation's at 3%. We can't be spending 7-8% more a year as we've been doing. The direction, to me, year to year is getting worse, and I think you can see that we're at the tax cap every year, and now the state has lowered the tax cap. So if we don't start working on that now, that to me is going to be the top priority. And I recently had one of my neighbors, an elderly gentleman, said to me, you know, I'm taking out loans to be able to keep paying my taxes throughout the year. I don't know how much longer I can do this. And this is a gentleman we want in town. He's helped build the town. He's a terrific guy. And that really drove home to me the importance of this.
Okay, thank you. Claudia, why are you running for office, and what would your priority be if you were elected?
I'm running for office. I guess the first time I ran for office was in 1977, and I got hooked from that time on. I served 16 full years on the council, and the off years I was at every council meeting. My main priority is bringing alternative revenue into the town of Tiverton. Right now, the taxpayers cannot afford to pay any more money, and I picked up the comprehensive plan. It's a very good plan, by the way. I got to give kudos to the planning board and the residents that, you know, gave their opinions on it. If we stick to this comprehensive plan and get some decent industry or anything to offset the tax rate, well, that's my main goal. Also, I would like to revise the Economic Development Commission. Right now, we don't have one. And I got the minutes from the Economic Development Commission. Their last meeting was in May, and they, the whole 4 members requested not to be appointed again. So right now we're without an Economic Development Commission, and I think that's very important because they're the go-between. We had one 3 years ago. They worked very well with the Newport Chamber of Commerce and Keith Stokes, and I think it's a very important part of a town. Every other neighboring town has one, and that would be my main goal, is to revise the economic. I'm sure there are businessmen in the town of Tiverton that are retired that would be more than happy to serve, that have connections out of town, that would be more than willing to help us. So that's my main goal.
Thank you. Cecil, why are you running for re-election, and if you are re-elected, what would be your top priority?
The reason I'm running for re-election is basically the same that I ran the first time, to build on my 2 years on the Budget Committee, 4 years as treasurer, to lend my knowledge and experience in the financial area and also in the broader management area to help the town be both effective and cost-effective, 2 very different things. And I would also add that the first 2 years on the council has been a learning experience to some degree. I didn't start from zero, having worked in town hall as treasurer for 4 years. But I think I still have a lot to contribute. And I've got 2 focuses. The first one continues to be the financial balance, because we have to control our finances, but yet we still have to provide the essential services. And there's going to be a lot of pressure, and that's going to be very difficult to do. My secondary effort is going to be in the implementation of the comprehensive plan, and I will join others in congratulating all the people, the planning board, and an untold number of people that put a lot of hours on in putting that very good report together. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay, tell us why you're running for office, and if you are elected, what would be your main priority?
Well, I've served the town fairly faithfully for 10 years on the zoning board, and the last 2 years also as vice chairman of the elementary school building committee. And I feel it's time to make a change in my service to the town. Like Brian mentioned, I believe that he who has been given much, has much to return. So I believe as a resident of the town, and I have the opportunity to serve, I want to serve the town. My main focus, if elected, would be, actually it's twofold. It's the taxes and controlled growth, and I believe they're both integrated. You really can't have controlled growth and also maintain a fiscal budget. Budgeting in the town, I feel, and most municipalities, has been on a what do we need as opposed to what do we have. I come from a long line in business, and businesses traditionally budget like your household does. They say, this is what we have, this is what we have in our budget, this is the dollars we have to spend, and we have to make our budget accordingly. As far as controlled growth, having been on the zoning board for 10 years, I've seen a lot of different things come through, and I think that our zoning and planning regulations could be cleaned up. And I think if we're going to keep developers, mostly out-of-state developers, off of our doors, and we're going to bring them in the way we want them to be brought in, we're going to have to go through our regulations and clean up a lot of the loopholes. Thank you.
Thank you. Louise, tell us why you're running for re-election, and if you are re-elected, what your top priority would be.
Well, one of the reasons I run for re-election is really an abiding interest in reconciling growth and development in the town. And it's a very tricky question because, as every person before me has identified the need for tax dollars, Jay put his finger on the question of how do we do this and do this sensibly so that we don't become Route 2 or, if you don't mind, part of Middletown that's now struggling with those same issues. That's not something we really want in Tiverton. So it is reconciling growth and development, and I think we have a lot of work to do and a lot of hard work to do. It was an issue 2 years ago. It's an issue today. There's no question that every month that goes by, developers discover us, okay, and they think it's wonderful. The film director of the state was down, and he had never been to Tiverton before. And he looked at me and he said, "This is like God's country." And I said, we work hard at doing that, at keeping that. At the same time, we do have to develop economic entities, hopefully homegrown, give them some encouragement. There's no question about that. The one thing that we really do have to focus on is, and this will come up on the ballot questions, we need to have a better sense, not just of our expenditures, but of our revenues. And one of the things on the ballot this time around is a full-time treasurer. This was not initiated initially by the council, although I think all of us support it. It was initiated by our part-time treasurer. We run a $32 million business with a part-time treasurer. That doesn't make any sense to anybody. That's a major issue. And one of the things that's very challenging is to grapple with some of these issues that we are definitely going to be, that we have now, they're going to increase. And the financial needs of the town are great. We're all going to be subject to new accounting rules that's going to show a lot of unfunded pension liabilities. We've done some work in that area, but we have a lot to do. And furthermore, sometimes those challenges are just plain fun. So among the hard work, it's fun working with people. It's fun disagreeing with people. But basically, if you have a little good faith, you come together on issues. And so I suppose that's why it's run. It's challenging, and at the same time, there's a measure of satisfaction when things get done. But you also realize it's not you that gets things done. It is the host of people that work in that town. And Tiverton has a humongous amount of volunteers that do very good work.
Great. Thank you very much. A nice endorsement for Tiverton. Don, now we know why you're running for re-election. You want to serve the town. Why are you running for re-election, and what would be your top priority if you are re-elected?
I'm running for re-election because the job's not done yet. I think it's like a continuation. Each year we seem to grapple with new problems and challenges. Some of the challenges that still remain is the development challenge. The rewriting or updating of the comprehensive plan should be followed by some zoning changes, which, to mirror the comp plan. I've said all along, Tiverton has to challenge developers by stating in our zoning ordinance what we do and don't want. There should be no reactive situations when somebody comes in. We should be proactive and say whether we want something or don't want it, and put that into our zoning codes so we're pretty clear about keeping Tiverton the type of town it is today. No one's benefited by a lot of the commercial growth I see all around us. I see that Seekonk had some major issues this year with budget problems. I can't think of a community in our area that has more retail development than Seekonk. So it doesn't tell me that that's the route I want to take. I find that development's going to be the biggest challenge in the next 2 years and probably in the next 10. But I think we can do a lot with the zoning code in making that very clear how we want to see Tiverton stay the way Tiverton is today. It's probably, as somebody said, some of our rules and regulations are unique, and my point is there's nothing wrong with being a unique community, and we need to stay that way. And I hope to be able to provide some of that foresight on that council to be able to help us get there.
Okay, thank you. Joanne, how do you feel about being last, alphabetically? Tell us why you're running for re-election and what your top priority would be if you're re-elected.
Well, I decided to, come back again for re-election because I found the first 2 years, as probably Buzz had mentioned before, is a huge learning curve. I had been to many meetings, watched from afar, thought you have a handle on things until you get to the other side, and it's a whole different platform. I feel that we have a lot of work to do. As some of the other people have mentioned here, that development will still continue to be a challenge. We've been discovered, but we just have to be careful, take it slowly, make sure, as to how I ran in the first time around, that it's the right fit for the town, and it's in the right place, and it's at the right time. I just feel that we are gaining some momentum. We have an excellent administrative staff. Our town administrator does an excellent job. He has great people working under him as department heads. So I think we're on a great road right now as to where we need to be. Everything is coming together informational-wise. It's and I feel that I can lend something. Just going to continue to foster good relationships between, the town as a whole. We're still one zip code. It's not us against them, and we need to just keep forging ahead with that. And I just feel that why I'm here is, I want fair and equal representation for everyone in the town.
Okay, thank you. Brian, we'll start with you this time. Everybody's mentioned, almost everybody's mentioned, at least in some context, the need to balance spending with revenues, services with what the taxpayers can afford to pay. Specifically, do you have some ideas about how to either ways to reduce spending, increase efficiencies, generate new revenues? Give us one idea that you have to help achieve that balance.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it, and this is something I've been saying for a couple of years, is it's the system, the way that we do things needs to change. And part of it is, and I think Jay had mentioned this, is we are in this situation where we look at what we need first and then we figure out how to pay for it, instead of looking at what do we have and then what can we spend within that amount that we have, how we can try to increase the pot of what we have to spend through development and that type of thing, smart development. But we need to, first of all, start out with the thing we can control, because we hear a lot about, the state's not providing enough and unfunded mandates, which is all true, but we can't control that. What we can control is how much we spend so that we don't keep passing this on to the taxpayers. The taxpayers have been very generous. The last couple of years, they've come to the financial meeting and they've been very reasonable. In terms of some ideas, I mean, the first one, we'll get into this later, that I'm concerned with is the financial town meeting. I think that that's one of the biggest hindrances to coming up with any type of long-term plan, with having our town officials put anything in place, because every year it's just a matter of getting to the meeting and hoping the right people turn out, and we don't end up having angry taxpayers cutting things without thinking about it, or adding things and changing everything that's been worked on for the past year. And we'll talk about that more later.
Certainly do. That's a question that I do have for everybody.
Yeah.
Is about the
But one other thing is just something that I'd like to see done is in contracts we have to you go where the money is, as the expression is, that you go that because where the money is available, and that is in the contracts, and particularly in the benefits. What I'd like to see is something where, first of all, we change the way of thinking about it, so it's not a matter of we pay. The employee pays $900, and then the town picks up the rest, because then if the insurance company decides to jack things up 14%, we're stuck picking all that up. And it's not a matter of fairness. People keep talking about what's fair for the employee. We all want to be fair, but we have to base it on what can we afford. Another thing I'd like to see is something where, before these contracts, whether it's on the school side or the municipal side, if we're going to be signing these big union contracts, because it's all done in secret and for understandable reasons, but before that gets voted on and approved by the elected body, the people who put that elected body here should know what the facts are, should know what all the details are. There should be a public hearing, just like we have for ordinances and everything else, where people can say, okay, now I see what you're providing in this contract. I don't agree with this. I agree with that. So that the elected officials, before they put that into place, have a chance to decide, to hear what people think, and is this something we want to go forward with? Do we want to make some revisions? That, I think, would be an important step in getting those costs under control.
Okay, thank you. Claudia, ideas that you have in terms of balancing the services and the ability to pay on the part of taxpayers, either in ways to save, cut spending, be more efficient, generate new revenues, or on other ideas that you have?
I think I'll be persistent.
Or another idea that you have. One idea that you have.
I'll be persistent in my views and get some alternative revenue into town. I got this memo that the planning board sent to the school committee, and it kind of alarmed me, because about 2 months ago there was an article in a paper where the superintendent was answering this memo and saying that, with all these plans and all these developments coming in, there was no way that even the schools that they were building today would be able to accommodate the pupils that were going to be coming into town. And right now, on this memo, there's like 289 subdivisions, land development applications in. I'm not saying they're all going to be approved, but by law, some of them will have to be approved. And there's got to be a medium here somewhere. We've got to get some revenue into town, going along with the comprehensive plan. Not bringing in really bad things, but going along with the comprehensive plan. I don't see why we can't bring in some revenue.
Okay, thank you. Cecil, ideas that you have in terms of spending, revenue, efficiencies?
If we can, first off, I think everybody has to realize that there is a distinct difference between the business world and the municipal world. And I first learned that when I was on the budget committee many years ago. Because in the business world, where I spent 28 years mostly in senior management positions, you had a lot more control over what you wanted to do. But in the municipal world, you don't have a choice. There will be a police force. There will be a fire department, so on and so forth. And following up on Brian's comment that we have to focus on what we can control, that's true. We've already started. In this round of collective bargaining, the entire council came together and said to the collective bargaining units that we have to look at the cost in total. We can't separate wages and medical and pension into different pieces as has been done in the past. We have to look at the total impact, and I frankly think we've done a good job. And we have not been always popular with the bargaining unit, but it was a situation where it was a fair deal and that both sides didn't get everything that they wanted. But we reached a compromise that worked. We have to continue doing that. I think that there are some efficiencies we need to look at. For example, we have a Department of Public Works, and we also have a maintenance department in the school system. I think there are some things where the two departments could be cooperating. I think that we also have to take a look at more technology. The town hall still operates with a series of personal computers. We don't have a town-wide local area network where we could gain a good deal of efficiency. So I think those are the focus that we have to work on internally. We also have to work on our state representatives and senators and urge them to reduce the amount of unfunded mandates that they keep passing on to us. And that's true even at the federal level. One of the things that's lurking is something with the rather mundane moniker of Stormwater 2, which really spins off of an Environmental Protection Act that was passed, I believe, 10 years ago at the federal level. And we don't know for sure what it's going to cost. We have over 100 outfalls going into navigable water that we're going to have to monitor. And we think we have 100. There may be more. So it's going to be a challenge, and we're just going to have to work at it. We're going to have to be incremental. There's no magic bullet out there. And with the school bond payments coming into play, it's going to be even more challenging.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jay, in terms of the balance between providing services and making sure that people can still afford to pay their taxes, what are some of the ideas that you have in terms of spending or revenues or efficiencies?
Well, having been on the elementary school building committee for the last 2 years, we were faced with an absolute number. The voters voted on the bond, $30 million to build 3 schools. So we had to build them, and they have to all be equal. So we were able to actually get the program they wanted and get it for the number by adhering strictly to the budget and looking outside the box. I think sometimes municipalities don't really look outside the box. I think we need to get with the school committee. I think we need to get with our budget committee, and as a group, come up with a budget that all 3 parties can live with, and then find ways to achieve it. I also feel that in order to bring more development to town, we're going to have to reduce our taxes to make ourselves more attractive. I don't think we can rely on alternative development at the moment. I think we need to put our fiscal house in order, and then I think we'll be attractive to outside business. I also think we need to look at working with other towns outside of Tiverton, areas, Portsmouth, Bristol, and look with them, meet with them, and share ideas. I think that's one way we can achieve this.
Okay. Thank you. Louise, you're busy writing over there. What ideas do you have to share with us?
I wasn't busy writing. I was busy trying to think.
Oh.
There's a difference. Basically, that's probably the toughest question that any of us will have to answer, because it carries with it an answer, a host of responses. And one is that the town traditionally, on the municipal side, I will say, has run a very lean budget, at times almost too lean, because of the availability of money. But I think that, and that must continue, as it will. I don't care who's on the council. Events are going to force us, and Cecil mentioned the fact that in our union contracts today, we are looking at a total package, a total increase. It used to be you'd bury certain things in benefits. You can't do that anymore. And I think we really have recognized that you can't do that anymore. But I think on the revenue side, the town has to get a better handle on not just the state aid, because in many ways we'd like to say we control it, but Tiverton really doesn't. But internally, within our own operations, we are in the 19th century on getting reports, knowing where certain revenues are not coming in, certain fees that have fallen into non-use, things that should be brought up to date. That is critical for the council. We get, for example, a year end, a monthly end of expenses, but we routinely don't get revenues. That's got to change. We've got to have cash flows that we know where we're going, so that when we do get together and we do establish a budget with the school committee and have some understanding, we're operating with facts and not, gee, this is what the budget committee says. And the budget committee relies on the same information that the council does. It's not always accurate. That has to change, and it has to change dramatically. We have no time to lose on that. So all of us would like to expand our tax base and all do those wonderful things. It's hard, and it's difficult to do it well and to do it right. But some things we can change, and that's one of them.
Good, thank you. Don, ideas that you have?
I want to correct something here. I heard tonight that with the growth in town, the new schools are not going to be able to keep up with it. Well, I seem to remember that we asked to build schools that would have even more student population. I think we're going with about 900. We wanted to be higher than that. The state came back to us and said, based on your growth, based on what's projected for the next X number of years, you're asking to build too much school, and we're not going to fund it because you don't need it. So I can't see where we don't have enough. What we're building isn't going to be enough. So I don't want to scare anybody to think that the residential development that's taking place, because it's kind of hard to stop it. If you have zones that are zoned a particular way, you're going to have to allow. I mean, they have a right to build if they want to develop that land. We have a great planning board that's going to make them do it in the best possible way for that piece of land they're trying to build on. That's going to happen. We changed the zoning in 2000 and literally cut the buildable parcels in the town of Tiverton in half. We just about doubled every single zone. So I don't think the school issue is an issue that should get people in fear because of residential growth. We can't have this fear that, every time we build a house, we put this major burden on the schools. We've got to get away from that line of thinking. We keep hearing a number for what it costs to educate a child in the school system at $9,000. Well, I feel if you're not at capacity, every time you add a student, you actually drop the number. Okay, because what you're doing is you still have those fixed costs of that school department, and when you add numbers, you bring that down. So those numbers sometimes get out of base. I think we're doing a lot. The first thing we did was we hired a new administrator. We have a professional in the office. Half of what I'm hearing here tonight of what people want to do is being done. Looking at the budget from a different standpoint, getting a better handle on the revenues that are coming in so you know what you can spend, demanding that the rest of the town hall provides the information so you have more accurate data, talking to other communities, whether it be, I know there's talks right now with Newport, Middletown, Portsmouth, about maybe training firemen together to create pools for candidates so we don't have additional expenses when we hire some of these people. There's a lot of things going on. I mean, I really believe that the motion is in place to straighten out a lot of the problems that we're discussing, here today. And I see us moving in that direction already. I agree with Brian about the financial town meeting. We did what we did in terms of structuring the ballot question the way it is, because this is going to allow us to come to the best possible resolution of how to replace something and not have people fear, well, I really don't like this, but I don't like the end of it. So we could probably put together, the Charter Review Committee, give them a year to study a problem and come up with the best possible answer. And that may make people a little happier so that we can finally have a resolution to, when we think we got it worked out, a financial town meeting can disrupt that and change the whole game at there. So I find us working in all the right directions, and I guess it goes back to the first question about when you're in the middle of this stuff and you see all of these changes, you can't walk away from this. You have to stay involved. And I think there's a wonderful group sitting there right now, and everybody's working to that end, whether it be contracts, whether it be some of this other stuff. But we're trying to achieve every one of the points that have been brought up, and I think it's already in process. And I give our administrator, Mr. Steckman, a lot of credit for this. He's come in, and from the day he got here, he's been telling us the things that we've probably all sat around and said we need to get to. So he's came in with the vision I think a lot of us have had to move this thing forward. So we're going to have a real good handle on the numbers. You're going to know what you can spend because you're going to know what's coming in. He tracks the revenues that haven't been tracked to the point he's tracking them. So I think we're moving in the direction, and I think we just need to continue the small steps we're taking that are going to produce the results that are necessary to get a handle on the whole situation.
Okay, thanks. Joanne, ideas you have in terms of achieving that balance between spending and taxes?
It's a delicate balance. I have to say I'm really looking forward, if I'm reelected, to work through the budget process this year. I think it's going to be one of the better budget processes we've had ever. I think we have the right people in Town Hall right now. They are all professionals. Much like Donald said, Glenn Steckman has brought such a level of professionalism to the town, along with the tax assessor and, the department heads, right down to, it's everyone, everywhere throughout the town. And I think he has brought in such an educational background that he is bringing people forward in their ways of thinking. It's not, this is the way we've done it, and this is the way it needs to go. So there isn't any magic bullet or a magic wand that we can just put on anything and poof, it's going to be there and everything's going to be wonderful. But Donald is right. We are on the right track with the right people. We need careful planning and development. We need, once we get our finance director / treasurer in place at the will of the people, that will be an enormous help, to work along with the partnership with Glenn and the rest of his administrative team. We are in the right direction, and it's very important that we're all back again in order to shepherd all of this through for the right conclusion.
Okay. Thank you. Buzz, ideas that you have, I know we've already talked a lot, but in terms of spending and taxes, your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Sheila. First, I want to say that the municipal side of the government is about a little less than 40% of the budget. The school committee, who have a lot of mandates, as I think Cecil mentioned, are over 60% of the budget. So which means every $100 we save is really a $40 savings, if you can follow that. And the school committee is doing the job they need to do, and we need to do the job we need to do. Particulars are fee structures. We had a entertainment license come before us the other night. I happened to sit next to Mr. Boland on the council, and I handed it to him and pointed to the upper right-hand corner where it said $2. I said, well, that's a bottle of water. But as many have mentioned tonight, the new administrator is aware of this. It's called user pays for the fees. If someone needs a fire inspection, a building inspection, use the landfill, people that are using it are paying their way, and the fees are being paid by the people that are using them. It is hard. I was always in private business. I think Jay Edwards mentioned, there's a profit motive in business. The profit motive in government, I see, well, we have to spend this money and we need this many taxes. And I said, well, wait, there's another component here as we're asking, and it's called fees, and it's called user-based fees. And we've got a good new tax assessor in. We've just done a big reval. As I said before, and Claudia mentioned, we need a new tax base. Whether it's industry, business. I don't think retail is a good tax base, but we can argue that another time. The new finance director, who we approved on the budget. We're going to discuss that later, but while we're on it, we approved the money for it on the budget. It's got to be approved for a charter change on November 7th by the voters for a full-time finance / treasurer director. Finance director / treasurer, thank you. And besides this person being able to help structure the workings in the town hall, he will be able to probably take some outsourcing work and do it for us, so that'll be a savings in money. And one of the big things that I know Glenn Steckman has planned for this finance director is to not only apply for but track grants, because through the history of the town where I've been involved about 10 years in politics, there's been some grants that got forgotten, got put aside. So that grant writing could be a big, huge boom for any community, and we hope for Tiverton. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to, we're going to spend more time talking in depth in the next forum about the ballot questions, but I would like to go around, Don and Brian both have mentioned the question going to voters about whether the town should study options to the financial town meeting, and I'd like to just go around quickly so that we could get to another question after this, and start with you, Claudia. What do you feel about the financial town meeting?
Well, I feel that we should keep it. I know it's antiquated and it's taking a chance on what people are going to vote on, and you know, it's kind of putting the budget in the people's hands. But you know, it was voted on once before. The people wanted it, and you know, as far as I'm concerned, the whole town, I think, still wants it. So I agree with it.
Okay, Cecil, yes or no? No.
We don't need it anymore. And I think that during the discussion we had, there were people came to town hall and supported it. But for every one that came to town hall to support it, I was getting 2 and 3 phone calls saying it's passed, it's time for change. And I do think that we need to move forward. The best and I've been going to town meetings for longer than I like to think about. I think the best I ever saw was 1,000 people, and we have 6,000 plus voters. And that 1,000 meeting was the rare exception. Usually we're scraping for a quorum. So I think that although it's a hallowed tradition, it's time for a change.
Okay, thank you. Jay, where do you stand on the financial town meeting?
Personally, I'm for it. I think it's the ultimate form of democracy. I think the people need an outlet. I think if we get rid of it, we're going to end up like our neighbor and then having special town meeting, whatever they want to call it, but they're going to end up having a special town meeting. And I think the people need an opportunity to get up and voice their opinions, not just coming to a council meeting, but coming to a meeting where people come to vote and vote on the budget. So I think it's important.
Okay, thank you. Louise, where do you stand on the financial town meeting?
I'm for it. But hold on.
That was great.
We've never been able to find anything to replace it. Studies, suggestions, etc. A financial town meeting, difficult, antiquated, but it presents a finality to decisions, and then people get on with, this is the money we have, let's get on with it. And we don't, I mean, Portsmouth was an eye-opener for adjoining communities. It seems to me, a poster child of what shouldn't happen. Now, was it because of the fact they don't have a finality like a financial town meeting each year? Sure, study it, but what are we going to replace it with? And I think it's important that people have that right to go and complain about me, complain about Mr. Boland, Mr. Edwards, all of us. And it kind of brings you up short, too. You may think you have all the answers. You don't. I don't. And the financial town meeting, by the probing and the questions, I think is useful.
Okay, thank you. Don, we kind of already know where you stand. Would you like to?
You know, the financial town meeting has to be looked at, and that's the whole key to this ballot question. In framing it the way it was framed is to say that if you want to eliminate a financial town meeting, you are going to have to provide the voter with an alternative that he likes better than what he has. That's what my goal is to see if there is that alternative. Yes, this question has been before the voter before, but not in this kind of a forum. There's always been, I think, a defeat based on the fact of what you were proposing to take its place. And unless and until, and that's why through a charter review commission who would have a year to investigate and take testimony and see if there is some other way. I agree that if we tried to mirror the Portsmouth system of eliminating the financial town meeting, the question would have been defeated resoundingly after what the effect was in Portsmouth. It shows that tent meeting and that 10%, although it should trigger something, it shouldn't be what was. So I think the way it's proposed here is the right way to go about this. You don't just replace something because it's old or has served its usefulness if you haven't got something else that's going to do a better job. And I want to see the better job put before me before we eliminate a financial town meeting. But the question should be here and should be answered by the voter.
Okay. Joanne, where do you stand on the financial town
Well,
meeting?
I've been torn. In my past experiences going to those town financial meetings for the past 23 years, I've kind of come to the point where I felt at one time it's really outlived its usefulness. It becomes dangerous, there's the us and the them mentality that go on in there. I don't think everybody comes, with a clear and cut vision of exactly where we need to be as a town as it relates to the budget. However, I really feel at this point that it is a necessary component to the government. It is the only check and balance system that we have, and that's very important, and that is the democratic process. So I have to say I wasn't in favor of even going there, putting a ballot question out there. I thought the Charter Commission would certainly research that in their due diligence or in their time. But now that it's out there, I will support the fact that we should work together and get an alternative. We just can't go out to the people and say, okay, we're going to do away with this and not offer something else in its place. But the something else, whatever it is, as it results in this study, must be the right fit. So I have to say I'm eager to work on it. So right now I'd like to keep it, but we need to work on it.
Okay, thank you. Buzz, your thoughts on the financial town meeting?
Maybe we should keep it.
That's definitive.
I think it should be discussed. I agree with, as Don Boland said, it's a different time in the history of the town. As far as what happened in Portsmouth, I think even if they still had their town meeting, that same thing would have happened. It was unfortunate, but it goes back to the state mandates to the school. And basically what happens at these town meetings, which a lot of people don't want to put on the table, it becomes the school parents versus the seniors because of taxes. And the seniors don't want to pay, and the other people want their kids educated. And they're both right. But if one or the other crowds a meeting and passes a vote through, that's not fair democracy. I don't have the answer right off the top of my head, but the reason this is put on for a question is that if the Charter Committee studies it, they will maybe come up with a good solution. I mean, a budget committee could put on a public hearing, take the information in the public hearing in front of the budget committee, which would be done at an auditorium, not at the town hall that holds a small amount of people, could take that information in. And then it could be deciphered through the budget committee, through the town council, through the town administrator. Thank you.
Thanks. Brian, obviously you brought this up when we were talking about the town, but if you want to add anything to your thoughts on the financial town meeting?
I could and have gone on about it at length. Just very in brief, as far as the whole Portsmouth thing, the fundamental problem of what people saw in the financial town meeting in Portsmouth, if people do see a problem with it, is inherent in our system. And this could happen in any year where people, and it may happen this year with the school bonds coming due. Very close vote last year where somebody was upset about the difference in the union contracts on the municipal side and the school side, and decided on $1 million cut for the schools arbitrarily. Let's just cut $1 million. Failed by 40 votes, if I'm remembering correctly. That's a 20-vote swing, and the schools would have been dealing with $1 million cut that hadn't been thought of till that night. That type of a situation, and then you run the risk of the schools then deciding to go the Carullo Act and to sue the voters, and then you get into that whole mess. That's inherent in the financial town meeting system beyond all the other problems with the financial town meeting system. The primary one, what Cecil said, we have 11,000 voters in Tiverton. We have a capacity for 1,000 at most in the gym. So if we succeed by getting people to turn out, we can't hold the meeting because we have nowhere to hold it. And most years we're struggling just to get 300. So I think it's regardless of what people, I respect the fact people have an attachment to it and everything else involved here. But the bottom line is what's best for the town. And I think it's best for the town to have a situation where our elected officials do the job we put them there for. An alternative is a real simple thing. You look at Massachusetts Prop 2.5, where the town officials can go up to a certain amount of a tax increase. If they want to exceed that, they come to the voters with a referendum where everybody gets a chance to vote. It's what Portsmouth is now considering. That's the way to do it. That's a clean, easy alternative I think people would be comfortable with.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We have about 10 minutes left, and I'd like to get one more round of answers in, and I'd like to switch off of finances, which we've talked a lot about, and everybody's been talking about growth, and also, Cecil, to start with you, you mentioned stormwater too, environmental issues. As you're planning for growth and looking at the town's residential and commercial expansion, talk a little bit about wastewater management and what you think the town should be doing in terms of sewers or in terms of other efforts to make sure that that's taken care of. And that's certainly an issue that's facing all of our towns, and at least on the Quidnick Island, too. Everybody's looking at their sewers and their stormwater management.
The viewers couldn't see all my fellow councilmen cringe.
We have to ask,
because
that question.
That's one of my
it's a dirty question.
It's a very important question. It's also one of my hot buttons that I spend a lot of time pushing for. And in fact, I pushed to, well, we actually got a budget to carry on some things that in the past hadn't been there. But I think we have to address it. We have to address it with a comprehensive plan. Right now, we end up doing a lot of what I will term spot sewering. Somebody comes in with a proposal, it gets reviewed, and then it comes before us, approve, don't approve. I think as a total council, we've come together and have done a good job resisting the spot zoning, and we need to go forward, lay out a comprehensive plan. There was one done several years ago that needs to be updated. I think we need to recognize reality that we need to concentrate on the north end of town. Given the geographic dispersion in the south end, probably not in my lifetime is it ever going to be there. But we do need to have a comprehensive overview, and we started down that path already with some things in motion, and then we need to, in a logical basis, as we can get funding. There is some federal money that's still available, and we've been taking advantage of that, and we need to continue to do so, and if possible, find some more money. And where Stormwater 2 is going to take us, that is really a big concern, because the wheels are grinding, and we really don't have a good handle on it. So it will be interesting. Stay tuned.
Thank you. Jay, your thoughts on sewer and stormwater management and town ideas that you have, what the town should be looking at?
Well, I think that the town should be looking
You
at
might want to move your
developing sewers. I also think, as far as the rest of town, we have vast portion of the town, probably the largest portion of it, the south end, which is never going to have sewers, and probably not in our lifetime. I think we need to look at something like Title V that they have in Massachusetts, where things happen, are triggered at the sale of a property, and people are forced at the sale to improve their ISDS systems, to improve their to bring their stuff up to grade. I think one of the problems, if we expand the sewers beyond where they are, I think it's going to just spark immense growth in town. I think sewers are just an open invitation to developers. So I think as we bring our sewer system further south, I think we need to be wary of that.
Okay, thank you. Louise, your thought on sewers and wastewater management?
One of the things that we recently did as a council, in fact, it was done in July of this year, is we instituted for the first time an on-site septic system that, not a sewer system, but on-site, recognizing that the portion of the town in the southern end and throughout the town, really, to upgrade cesspools and to institute initially a voluntary program to have an inspection and to bring your septic system into repair. But we added something, and it's not dissimilar to Title V in Massachusetts, but we added a provision which said that upon sale of a property, a buyer has 1 year to bring the septic cesspool into compliance with current standards. Now, that caused some consternation, so because we implemented it right away, but knowing that it takes a while for a town to get geared up, to get software in place, we deferred that date now until January 1st of '07. But that was a major step. It was 4 years in the making. We had a number of volunteers who were working on this ordinance. It probably hasn't received all the publicity that it needs to get, but major step, and it will help the town and its groundwater on an ongoing basis. With regard to sewers, I think if we could start in the old District 6 where the soil contamination issue exists today, somehow if we could bring those two issues together, but talk about a challenge, that is going to be a challenge. But it is one that is really deserving of council's attention as to how to do this. There may come an opportunity to do that. I know the wastewater treatment plant is in the process now of upgrading the program, and you need to take that step before you can even apply for state revolving funds, etc. So there is a lot in that area. We could go on, but
I know.
But Donald?
I have to agree. Passing the wastewater management ordinance, which basically is trying to get under control and get a much better handle. People keep saying, the systems in the north end are failing and so forth and so on. You have to really get a handle on how much of it is in failure. There are some systems there that have failed. There is no doubt about that. Clear understanding of that. But there's a lot of systems that have been upgraded over the years. So that the north end of town is not as in dire situation as I think everybody makes it out to be. We would have to look in terms of, and I don't think there's enough record keeping between the town and the state to see, how many failures are reported and so forth, how many have been upgraded and so forth. Right now, the biggest problem is there is no money. But the things that the wastewater management ordinance did was it created a 5 districts, sort of like, and it's going to start in the watershed areas at Stafford Pond, it's going to move to the non-put watershed area, and eventually get through the entire town where everyone's system will be inspected. We're going to know exactly what the problem is throughout the entire town over a period of time. We're proceeding wherever there's monies available to do sewers. But when you talk about people who are having problems with the tax burden they face, how do you tell that person we're going to put a sewer line in front of your house? It's going to cost you probably $20,000 or $30,000 as a betterment fee to each household to cover the cost of that. Because you can't put the burden on the people who live in the south end who say, I have a functioning ISDS, I get it pumped, I do what it takes to maintain it. So we have to have this very delicate balance. I think some of the growth that's going to take place, whether it be development at the Bourne Mill, which it's in the works, there's nothing definite or anything about it, but those are going to be challenges that are going to increase our sewering capacity, and it's going to be done a lot of times through development. We've used the community block grant money very wisely and have sewers now in the tightest areas in the north end of town, which would be like Rock Street, Clement Street, and so forth. And I think it's almost down to Hilton right now, or parts of Hilton are done. And we continue to do that as we have money available. But again, it's like, be careful what you ask for. Right now it's $6.05 a 100 cubic feet for a sewer user fee, and it's about $4 a 100 cubic feet for water intake. So it's about $10 a 100 cubic feet, or $10 every 700 gallons of water if you're on town water and sewer. So we have to look at where the mix is, where it fits, and what's right. Our development making every parcel now, even in the north end of town, I think the smallest district is an R30. So anything that would be further developed up there is going to have the capacity to handle an ISDS. And so this is a balance, and this is a problem that's been going since 1977 when the Berger report was done. And before we move forward on a sewer project, we really need to spend the money and the time to update that, not just take a look at this and see how we can fit some new numbers to this. We have to see the legitimacy of the report. So there's a lot of work to be done in that area.
Okay, thank you. Joanne.
And believe me, there isn't anybody who knows more than that than him. So, I have to commend Donald on, he brings a wealth of information on that subject to the council. It's all with careful planning. Again, I'm sorry, it's a necessary evil. It's a necessary evil that, we all have to face. And we have to work together, bring those plans together. Donald said, we had the Berger report. It was something in place, but now we need to look at that and update that and see how it will fit. As usual, there isn't any money. So, we just have to keep plugging along at it little by little as a council, as a team, and do the best we can.
Okay, thank you. Buzz, your thoughts on sewers?
On the sewers or wastewater?
Well, quickly, whichever
we
you
don't
want.
have time to answer questions,
right.
do we?
No.
My thoughts on the sewers,
They stink.
Don
No.
wrapped it up pretty good, but basically, we need to increase the flow, which increases the customers, and the more customers we have, the more we can reduce the rates to customers. But we have to do it, hopefully, with some grants. We can't slam people with $20,000 fees to do it, and we need to move ahead. There is the new plan is out to bid, and the update master plan for it will come soon. And as I said, grants are being worked on for that to help people who need sewers afford sewers. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
I think the sewer issue is a perfect example, from my perspective, of what doesn't work in the way we currently do things financially, because this is something that's been hanging out there for years. The on-site wastewater management thing that we just passed is actually an example of how, if you work at it and put something together, you look at all the grants available, you try to make it affordable for people, that you can put something together that meets your needs. The problem is right now is the money's not there, as people have mentioned, and trying to put together a long-term overall plan for anything, including sewers, is difficult in the system we have now, where authority is very decentralized, where the financial decisions, the budget decisions, are in large part being made at the financial meeting. It's very difficult to be able to put something together, and I think that's why we want to be able to have a situation for this and other matters where the council has the ability to put together that type of a plan and be held accountable for it.
Okay, thank you. Claudia?
Okay, I agree with Brian. It's very well needed, but there is no money. I've been trying to work on this for the last 20 years. And at the time, like Mr. Boland said, I think it was 1977, it went on a ballot and it was voted down. We could have got 70% of federal government money to put them in, but it was voted down. We keep doing it piecemeal with the grants. I think, like Donald said, we're down to the middle of Hilton Street. We get $100,000 every year, and we do what we can do, unless we hit ledge, and it costs us a lot of money. But I fully agree we need it desperately.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all the time we have for this forum. Once again, I'd like to thank candidates for Tiverton Town Council for joining us tonight and remind voters that Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th. I'm Sheila Malawney, Managing Editor of the Newport Daily News, and on behalf of the NCTV Access Group, thanks for watching. In a few minutes, we will return with a forum on the ballot questions facing